Hello there, everybody. Welcome to Technique Tuesday. My name is Ali Board, and I am a professional artist, educator, and author. And I'm broadcasting live from my studio down here on the south coast of the UK in Dorset. It's really fabulous to have you with me. Now, every month I set myself a challenge that could be a particular subject, that could be an artistic style, a school of art, a formal element. But this month I've actually set myself a medium, and it is the medium of pastels. But I want to, right from the get-go, just give a bit of clarification as to the sort of pastels that I am talking about. I am talking about chalk pastels. Now, I absolutely understand that they don't have chalk in them. Okay, I get that. I get that they're pigment and binder. But I called them chalk pastels to sort of differentiate between them and oil pastels. So oil pastels are those really kind of sticky, oily type that are used for resist techniques. Very often used for life drawing, sometimes used as a bit of underpainting for oils, things like that. Now, the word pastel just means stick. So you can have an oil pastel, a soft pastel, a chalk pastel, a water-soluble pastel, all those kind of things. Now, like I said, I call them chalk pastels so that we understand what we're talking about. And it's not because I think they have chalk in them. It's because of the type of mark that they make, that very soft, chalky kind of consistency. So you'll probably find as you do your rounds of YouTube and Pinterest and various places that you go to look for your tutorials that they're often described as that. But don't be under any illusion that they have chalk in them, because most of the time they don't, unless they are very, very cheap as well. So there's all sorts of things that we need to think about when we're talking about chalk pastels, soft pastels, as I'm going to call them from now on. And that is, there's techniques involved in that. They're really suitable for some types of subject matter, such as animals, but they can be used for anything. Now, one of the things that I wanted to cover in Technique Tuesday this month was some of the surfaces and accessories, because there is a bewildering array. Now, I can't tell you every type of surface and pastel that is out there. I can only tell you some of the ones that I use, some of the ones that are on my radar in terms of things that I see my students use, or things that people bring to class that we then kind of experiment with and investigate, or things that we sell on the Learning to Paint website because we think they are of use to you, or because they're affordable, all those sorts of things. So we're going to look at all of that kind of stuff today. But if you are watching this live, you might be watching on catch up, which is absolutely fine. But if you are watching this live, then I'm going to guess you're in the chat somewhere. So good morning to everybody who is in the chat. Lots of you there this morning. It's lovely to have you with me. Thank you very much for that. Joe is saying it's been a while. Good morning, Joe. Doesn't matter. You can disappear, pop back up as often as you like. Really not a problem. Lots of people saying good morning. Some people having very, very varying weather for this time of year. We like to talk about the weather. We're British. We like to talk about the weather because it's a very levelling thing. Now, before we get to the demonstration, you may have seen that in the bottom corner of the screen is a little QR code. Now, I'm going to tell you more about that later, but just in case you are watching this on a TV, or you're watching it on a laptop or a desktop or something like that, you may be used to seeing QR codes on things. That is for a very special event. So just in case you haven't used one before, hold up your smartphone. You might need to zoom in a little bit and get the focus on that QR code, and it will take you to a very special page of my website. But we'll talk more about that later. Let's go straight to the overhead camera because I want to talk about surfaces first. It's for doing this kind of thing. Now, this is coming up later in the month. If you are watching this in November 2025, this is going to be the Technique Tuesday tips and tricks that I think goes out on the 25th of November, where I do this kind of landscape style of technique. And so we need to think about surface, don't we? Not because there are good and bad surfaces, but there's different surfaces for different things. So let's go and have a look and see what I've got gathered together for the purposes of this TT. So I've got a selection here. These are all things that I use. They're all things that, like I said, are either in the shop or I have something, some use. I'm just maneuvering myself because I've just managed to wheel my chair over my own skirt. And I want to sort of split them into a few categories. Now, the first category are pastel papers. And I have, what have I got here? I've got three different kinds, I think. Let us talk about these three. So when I talk about pastel paper, and you will see I have already done some scribbling on this sheet, I'm talking about the slightly thinner quality. So a bit more like your kind of cartridge paper, that kind of thickness. This one is this Canson Miton before I, yes. So this is a brand called Canson Miton, and it is 160 grams. So it's thin, but it's a substantial quality. Now, for you paper nerds out there, I know of which there are many of you, we call this, in my online shop, we call this paper that is suitable for experimental media. Basically, it's anything that's dry, because you can use graphite on this, you can use pastel on this, you can use coloured pencil on this, you can paint on it, but it's a little bit on the thin side. But it does come in some rather exciting colours. This is just an assorted pack that I pulled out of our stock. You can see we've got dark colours, bright colours, light colours. You can buy them all individually as well if there's a particular colour that you like. But the one thing I want to show you with all of these is that they vary in the texture that they produce. Let's just take you into the close-up camera. Can you see there? In the Canson Miton, you get this honeycomb texture. You can see it actually very clearly in the camera right there. And I'm not saying that that is good or bad. What I'm saying is when you buy pastel papers, you get papers that have different textures. You'll see some of them in just a second. This is the Canson Miton, and this is what's known as a honeycomb texture, or I call it a honeycomb texture. And you can buy it in sheets, you can buy it in single colours, you can buy it in assorted colours. Of all the pastel papers, I have 2 or 3 that I particularly like using. Depends on what it is that I'm drawing, if I'm honest. Canson Miton, definitely one of my favourites. Let's show you another one. I'm just going to move that out of the way. Actually, let's show you this one. This is Hahnemüller's Lana pastel paper. Very similar looking at first glance because it's got a similar colour scheme. Just in case you're wondering what this is, my amazing and wonderful dad, who I still work with after all these years, produces pads for me sometimes. And we'd run out of glassine. Glassine is another accessory that might be useful to you. It sometimes comes in pads, but if we're trying to keep the cost down, just occasionally we use something called bank paper, which is a 45 gram paper, very light. This isn't, well, you could draw on it. It isn't necessarily to draw on, it's to just keep things from scuffing. Now, have I done? Yes, look at that. So I can show you this one in the close-up as well. So this is the Hahnemüller Lana. So it's similar to the Canson, but not quite as pronounced as the honeycomb. Let's find the other piece of paper so you can compare and contrast. Can you see there a very pronounced kind of honeycomb effect? Less so with this one. That doesn't mean that it's bad. What it means is if you're after something that has less texture to it, so maybe you're trying to do something very detailed, very, very precise. So it might be that the Lana, Hahnemüller's Lana pastel paper does a better job. Now, another one that I have for you is Fabriano. You'll notice these names cropping up. You'll notice that there's a direct correlation between the brands of watercolor paper that I use and the brands of pastel paper that I use. I use Hahnemüller all the time. And another watercolor paper that I use a lot is Fabriano, the Italian-made papers. And this is their pastel paper. This is called Tiziano, which is a great name, isn't it? And again, this has a slightly different texture to it too. The thing I do love about the Tiziano is the real subtle colours that you can get. So I know that you can see here you've got a very bright violet and a very bright yellow, but I do love these kind of flannel kind of colours, the greys, because they have an interesting little fleck in them as well. Can you see those? Rather delightful. So if you were doing an animal portrait or something where you wanted some extra texture, they'd be quite interesting to experiment with as well. And here you've got an example of the texture that you'll get from Tiziano. Can you see it's a little more like a basket weave type of effect? It's more kind of crisscross as it's going on there. So I find that it's sort of somewhere between the Canson Miton and the Hahnemüller Lana. It sort of occupies a space in between. So again, that is something that you might want to think about when choosing your papers. Now, as you can see, these packs are produced by us. We like to produce assorted packs for you because we believe that one of the ways of finding out whether a colour suits you, or if you just want to kind of experiment with a few things, then an assorted pack of colours is a good way to go. May I also say that if you're into crafts in a big way, and you like to do die cutting or you like to do greetings card making, the pastel papers are excellent because they're really good quality. They cut, they score, they fold really beautifully. And of course, you've got a delightful array of colours. So don't necessarily think of your pastel papers as just being for pastels, because like I said, you can try all sorts of dry media on them, but you can use them for crafts as well. So if you don't take to them in any way, then you're not wasting your money. You could make a greetings card out of it. You could use it for backing, for if you wanted to mount a little watercolour, all of those kind of things. Now, you can, out there in art materials land, of course, buy bigger sheets, bigger pads, bigger quantities. This is one of my Canson Miton pads. I have this one because it's quite useful. I do a lot of animal portraits in pastel, and so these kind of colours are useful for that. Those sort of biscuity brown tones. You can see I think I've probably used all the grey already because it's usually the first one to go for me. But you can buy a whole assortment of pads. They get presented in all types of ways. So that sort of covers pastel paper. There's a lot more pastel paper out there than I have even started to list. So go out and have a look at it. If you're in any doubt whatsoever, you are always welcome to message me, and if I have used it, I can give you some advice, and if not, I can sometimes point you in the right direction for somebody who has, and have a look at YouTube to see how different artists use their surfaces, because it's helpful, isn't it, just to see how they react. Now, I brought this one. Now, this is not one I particularly use, but when I was prepping for this demonstration, I found it in my stash. This is quite an interesting paper called Miton Touch. Now, since I've bought this pad, there's a lot of variations in the Miton range. So this pad, I think, is now a little bit obsolete. If I'm correct, I think there's another version of Miton Touch out. So that's why I say it's kind of bewildering. But I brought it out because it's kind of interesting. It's got a white border all the way around. Excuse me. But this starts to look at what we call an abraded surface. And that is a surface that holds more of your chalk pastel to it so that you can layer up. With pastel paper, you'll find that 2 or 3 layers and the texture is full. Whereas a much heavier grade or something that has a real surface to it, feels a little rougher, you're going to be able to layer up your pastels much more. And this is one of the entries. Now, one of the reasons I'm not wild about this, it does have a very good black, I have to say, because this is another type of black, and it is one of the blacker blacks. But in this pad, I'm not wild about some of these colours. But if you buy it in separate sheets, then you can always choose which colour you want. And a lot of the time on the pads, it gives you good information for the weight. I'm not sure if you can paint on that one, but we'll come to it. It's just not something I use, but I happen to find it in my stash. Now let's move those out of the way and get on to my, let's move all of those out of the way, get on to my favourite surface for chalk pastels, which is Pastel Matte. This is made by Clairefontaine. This is pretty standard across a lot of pastel artists. You will find that pastel artists, coloured pencil artists, lots of artists use this because it is pretty universal. If you've ever attended any of my pastel workshops or any of my mixed media workshops based on pastel, you will have seen me use this. It isn't the cheapest, but it's by no means the most expensive either. Now, this is an interesting surface because it's cork based and it's kind of blasted at the surface, comes in a huge variety of colours. Let's just show you some of these in here. As you can see, I've done a few experiments on there already. You can layer up and layer up and layer up on this stuff, and it is very hard wearing. I can be really mean to this surface. I can use my pencils on it. I can use my sticks of pastel. And the thing that absolutely sells it for me is that I can paint on it as well. And what that means is that very often I combine gouache and pastel, particularly for my animal portraits, and I can paint on this surface first, and then I can go back over with my pastel pencils and I can put in the detail or the fluff or the fur or the feathers or whatever it is that I am adding to it. And I'm glancing around because I have misplaced it. Here it is. In the Technique Tuesday tips and tricks for this month, you'll see me do this painting, which is this amazing tulip field photograph that I found. And whilst I didn't paint on this, I did use a combination of chalk sticks and pastel pencils, but you can get exquisite amounts of detail out of it as well. Let's show you that windmill in the close-up. That is one of the major reasons that I love Pastel Matte, because I can go from my most impressionistic mark-making blended style of technique all the way through to something very soft and fuzzy for my skies. And I can be using my pastel pencils for all the detail. So for me, Pastel Matte is an absolute winner. Now you can buy it in pads, but you can also buy it in sheet form. And if you have a look at the Learning to Paint website, then we even sell it in single sheets so that you can try all sorts of colours on to see if they fit. Now I have 2 or 3 favourites. I particularly like this colour, which is called Anthracite. They do a really nice dark blue as well that I use a lot, and a wine colour. But to be fair, I mean, there's greys, there's blues, there's the kind of the pale greens. I use all of them, not going to lie, because if it's for a landscape, I'm going to use a green. If it's for something that I want some drama, then it's probably going to be the anthracite or the dark blue. but I can mix and match those, and that is my recommendation. You will also find on a lot of coloured pencil websites, a lot of people use Pastel Matte just because it's very reliable. It isn't the most expensive of all of them, and easy to find. So it makes it great for us tutors to be able to say, yeah, go and get this stuff because it's easy to find. It does what it says, and you can go from there. Now, another section of pastel surfaces comes in the form of papers that are based more like a sandpaper. Now, you can actually use sandpaper. So if this is something that you think, ooh, I really fancy doing impressionistic techniques, then get your sandpaper out. Obviously, it varies in grit, so you can experiment with those surfaces too. And you might even have bits of sandpaper for sharpening pencils or any of that kind of stuff. My only word of warning with any of these papers is that they will chew through your pencils or your pastel sticks, just because they are highly graded. You know, they're very abrasive in what they do. So you could experiment with that. You could also experiment with wet and dry sandpaper. That's quite interesting to paint on. It's just that sandpaper, this kind of hardware type of stuff, and wet and dry paper is not archival. So you're taking a risk in, if you do a painting and it turns out to be really rather lovely and you want to frame it or even sell it, you are risking the fact that this probably has some acids in it. It's certainly not meant to be hung on the wall or in direct sunlight. I mean, you shouldn't hang anything in direct sunlight, but still, that's just a risk that sometimes is worth taking if you want to experiment, but you might want to think a bit further than that. Now, these are two types of paper that you can absolutely rely on. This one's made by Sennelier. They just call it pastel card. This is quite difficult to come by now, but it is rather beautiful to work on. Let's just skate something across this, and let's do it in close up so that you can see exactly the type of mark that you get out of it. The thing about this, of course, is because it's got such a textured surface, you can layer upon layer upon layer over the top of it. Let's just grab another. Oh, no, that's not what I thought I grabbed. To the point where you can even do white over black, which you would struggle to do on a pastel on a pastel paper. So you can see I've almost obliterated that black there. And this is quite a good test. If you're trying to test surfaces, this is quite a good one to do. Can I put white over black? Because that will tell you how much texture is at your disposal with a variety of surfaces. So this is, like I said, the Sennelier pastel card. I've got a pad here where you've got a variety of colours in it. Oh, what's that? The start of what was probably a fox. I love going through pads where I've clearly abandoned a project. Is there anything else lurking in here? Nope. Some interesting colours. I'm not sure that I'm wild about this peachy colour, but I'm sure it would possibly be good for portraits. Maybe it's just because I don't do human portraits. I tend to prefer animal portraits. Let's stick that to one side. Now, this is another interesting surface. And this one, I thought I was going to hate. I absolutely thought I was going to hate it. Turns out I really love it. And if you're a member of the All Aboard artists, you will have seen me demonstrate on this month. Now, this is called UArt. It is, as you can see, a premium sanded pastel paper. This is a pack that I got where it has different grades. You can see there. And so they're graded a little bit like sandpaper, in that the higher the number, the smoother they are. But it is quite tricky to get. Now, I don't like that kind of colour. It's a bit dull for me, if I'm honest. This is the black version of it, and this stuff is incredible. I wouldn't recommend using hands on it or leaning on it because it is like sandpaper. But what I want to show you is just how crisp a line you can get out of it. Let me just grab my white pastel pencil again, and you can get some of the sharpest elements on this. I'm not even pressing very hard. And look how detailed you can get your pastels to be on this surface. I don't know if you can hear as well the rather lovely noise it makes. You can layer upon layer upon layer on this. You'll be able to put down an awful lot of pastel, and it doesn't really have a texture. So if you're the sort of artist that likes to do things in exquisite amounts of detail, or you're trying to draw something where there's no room for error. So I've done a demonstration of a champagne glass on this, because I needed to get all of those ellipses and circles and reflections correct in my glass, and it's much easier to do on a paper like this than it is, say, on a pastel paper. So there's lots and lots of things for you to consider there. One of the things to do is to just buy small quantities of stuff. Don't buy great big pads, because like me, the pad will sit there if you don't like the colours or it's a surface that isn't producing what you want it to produce. Go through things, find somewhere where you can buy just a sheet of this and a small pack of this, test those things out, or stick the name of the paper into YouTube or into Pinterest and see what other people are using it for. Just experiment. Even if it's down to you using 2 or 3 different kinds of pastel on there, it's going to be worth it, isn't it? Because then you're not having to battle it when you come to actually painting a picture. Now, we've still got some accessories to talk about, but one of the things that I do just want to bring your attention to is a project that I am doing this Christmas. So if you're watching live or you're watching on catch up in late 2025, you may already know that every year, every festive time of the year, I try to bring people together with a project. Now, I have in previous years gone live on Christmas Day, which I've really enjoyed. It's been lovely to have you there, but it's very short-lived. I only have you for about an hour, and then sometimes the conversation ends. So I thought that this year I would try something a little bit different. So if you scan that QR code, look just there, I can point to it. If you scan that QR code with your smartphone or with your tablet, go to the camera settings. You might need to zoom in on it a little bit. You have to do it away. You can't do it if that's what you're watching it, or if you're watching me on a phone right now, you can't kind of reverse engineer it. But if you're watching it on another device and have a second one in your hand, you can do it. And what will happen is that it will take you to this part of my website. And I have called it 12 Days of Creativity. So rather than coming to you for just one day, I'm going to be broadcasting over 12 days. And we're going to do a project together. Now, one of the things that I would like your help with, please tell as many people as you possibly can. This is completely free. You don't need to pay for this whatsoever. And the idea of it is, doesn't matter what your level of skill, you'll be able to create an illuminated letter. Now, the amount of information that I've got at the moment is a little bit sketchy. However, there's a place that you can go where you can be kept up to date with all of it. So you'll find this page on my website. If you're looking at it, it's called 12 Days of Creativity, and you can sign up for the information. Now, I don't bombard you with stuff, and my website is not full of hundreds of adverts that you have to navigate your way around. Just fill in that little form and I will send you all of the information straight to your inbox so that you don't need to kind of keep up with it. You can absolutely have it delivered to you. And I will go live on Christmas Eve on the 24th of December, and then I will broadcast a little bit of the project every day for 12 days so that you can either wait till the end. The last one is you can tell I've been in the process of building the website. The last day is the 4th of January. So you can either, a bit like watching the TV, you can either wait till the 4th of January and binge watch the lot, or you can be with me each day. And we'll set up a situation where you can share your works in progress, where you can talk to each other. But it just means that if you struggle in this time of year, particularly that in-between time between Christmas, if you celebrate Christmas, and the new year and beyond, it can sometimes be a very lonely time of year, or you can have lost your creative mojo. So I thought this time I would do 12 days of stuff, and it's not very long each day. Admittedly, haven't recorded it yet, but I have my project all set to go. And so it's not going to be long every day. You don't have to give up huge amounts of time for it. It's just there to pick up or put down. And you know me, you know that I will give you lots of options for how you can expand on the project, how you can simplify it if you're a beginner. So if you've got somebody in mind that you think, oh, this would be perfect for so-and-so because they've been wanting to get into painting, then this might be the way to encourage them. But sign up for that newsletter. I will send you all of the information as soon as I have it. Keep your eyes peeled on the website, on my social media, on my YouTube channel, all of those sorts of things. Hit the subscribe button so that you know when I've got a new video out. And over that Christmas period, you'll be able to follow along pretty much for the entirety of it. And I cannot wait to see what you come up with. I can't wait to see what I come up with, to be honest, because like all things, I've got all these ideas swimming around in my head, but haven't made them come out on the paper yet. I'm still yet to record it, but that will happen in the next few days. Now, let's talk about pastel accessories. We've talked about surfaces, and now we need to talk about pastel accessories. So what do I mean by accessories? I mean all of these delicious things that I have on my desk, which are supposed to make the drawing, the blending, the sharpening of pastels all easier. So let's have a little think about what's going to be useful to you, and you can see some of them in action as well. So let's start off with a few simple things. I'm just going to gather, I've got so much stuff on my desk, you would not believe. Look at this, half a ton of stuff, because if you're like me, you enjoy the collecting of the materials as much as you do the using of them. Right, let's start with something simple. Erasers, definitely classed as a pastel accessory. For me, two main types of eraser: a putty eraser like this one, which is a slightly grim colour now, but it still does the job. And a plastic eraser. Plastic eraser will erase cleanly. A putty eraser is designed to just pick your pastel from the surface. I use both of them. The other thing that I do tend to use for pastels more than any other media is a battery eraser. One of these, where I can be much more precise. Let me just find a little bit. Let's push those to the top. See if we can get this into the close-up. With a battery eraser, I can be a bit more precise if I chip away at that than me with a massive plastic eraser, where I'm not able to kind of get into the nooks and crannies of things. Let me just find another tool while we're talking about erasers. That is something I use, which is a stencil brush. And stencil brushes are multi-functional because they can blend your pastel, but they can also flick away some of the dust, so that if you're trying to rub something out, then you can get rid of that dust with your stencil brush. So a battery eraser there, I find pretty useful. Now, I'm not going to talk at length about sharpening. That is either sharpening your pastel pencils like this, or making sharper edges on your pastel sticks. There's an entire YouTube Technique Tuesday, I seem to remember, all about sharpening. Do go and have a search on my channel for that, where I talk about sharpeners like this, where I talk about sharpening guides, where I talk about rotary sharpeners, all of that kind of stuff. So go and search that out, because if you're struggling with sharpening various tools, whether that be pastel pencil or graphite pencil or whatever it is, it might be that that sharpening video helps you out. So we kind of talked about erasing and sharpening. Let's talk about blending, because let's face it, when we're talking about pastels, we're probably talking about how we want to blend various colours together, whether that be your pastel sticks like this, or your pastel pencils like this. Now, you can, of course, one of the easiest things that you can use to blend your pastels together is a good old finger. But there's a couple of reasons why you might not want to do that. We talked briefly about that, didn't we, when we were talking about the UArt paper. Anything that is sanded or abraded, I don't know that you're going to want to rub your finger over the top of it. Take it from me, I mean, not that this happened to me at all, of course, you are going to rub your fingertip off, okay? It's not nice. You don't want to put yourself out of action. So you might not want to use your finger. But let's say you're using a pastel paper. Let me just grab my little Lana pad. Let's say you want to blend some of these lines together. And this isn't a heavy sanded paper. So there should be no reason in the world why you wouldn't want to use your finger and blend your pastel in that way. But bear in mind that you have oils in your hand just naturally. You might use a moisturizer on your hand. All of those things are going to transfer to your paper, and if you're not careful, they can penetrate the surface of your paper, and then you would struggle to layer up over the top. So it might be that you want to use some other blending tools, and I've got several here for you to have a look at. Probably the most well-known is this, which is called a paper stump. Now, it's sometimes also called a torchon, but a torchon tends to be this little, sort of slightly smaller version. I like a good old paper stump like this. You can see I've got a box full. They come in various sizes and shapes. I can blend my pastel or my charcoal or whatever it is together very successfully with my paper stump. I am not getting rid of my fingerprint. I am not damaging my paper in any way. And because of the point on these, I can really get into the nooks and crannies. Now, one of the things I've been doing in one of my life drawing classes recently is we've actually been using these for drawing. So we've been dipping them into charcoal powder or graphite powder, and then we've actually been using them to draw with as well. So not only is it a blending tool or a smudging stick, it is also something that you can draw with. Now, they get dirty very cleanly, very quickly. Look at the state of some of these, but there's a lovely, easy way of cleaning them. And that's this, which is a sandpaper block. So if you get to this part and all it's doing is creating something very grubby on your piece of paper, your sandpaper block or a piece of sandpaper can clean them off nice and quickly. I mean, this one is really grubby. I'm just going to tap this onto the side, just to get rid of some of the detritus. And let's clean it up. Now, I've just noticed that a few more people have entered the live room. Lovely to have you with me this morning. Don't worry if you've missed the beginning. You can always go back when the broadcast has ended to watch what we talked about. So again, you can clean it up and I can go back in and I can use that for smudging. So these are called, just again for your... so that you understand, these are called paper stumps, and you'll find them almost every place that sells art materials sells these as well. and this is your sandpaper block, okay? Now, some other tools that I use for smudging. Let's pull a selection of them out here with my little stencil brush. So these are 3 of the others that I use all the time. This literally is called a blending tool. It's interesting because it's got a hard end for very precise blending where you need there to be a mark or a shape. And it's got a soft little spongy end as well, which does literally a softer mark or can blend larger areas together. They tend to come in a set that looks like this. So you've got a large one and a small one. And so you can do big areas or little areas in that way. These are rather useful. With the spongy end, you can just clean by wiping it in a piece of kitchen roll. You can clean the hard end on your sandpaper block, just like the paper stumps. So when I want something precise, or it's particularly the spongy ends that I like on these tools. If I want to be able to smudge out the ends of a line, or I've got a tiny little area in an eye or a bit of fur, something like that, where I want there to be a soft mark, those are very useful. Now, stencil brushes, you saw me flick away bits of eraser earlier. I use these a lot as well. Now, I have 2 different kinds. I have, where'd that gone? These tend to come in sets of 3. You can have them where they're, let's show you in the close-up. You can have them where they're straight across the top, or they are at an angle. And it's sort of horses for courses, really. The angled ones are useful for not needing to use it kind of overhead, and they make a nice kind of blended mark. Let's do this. They're useful for bigger areas, I find. Now, the little straight across the top is for if I need to remove pastel from a surface so that I can draw back into it. Occasionally, particularly with things like pastel mat or UArt, you fill up the texture of the paper and then you can't get any more down because you get a bit carried away. But there's a lovely technique where you chip away the majority of the pastel, you get rid of that dust, and then you can draw back over the top of that because the stencil brush has kind of cleared the path for it. So those are multi-use, those tools. They can blend or they can chip away as well. Now, you might like doing great big pastel paintings, either using, excuse me, I'm just going to have a quick sip of coffee. Better. You might be using pastel sticks, or you might be using pan pastels. Pan pastels are those pastels that look like giant eyeshadows. And so you need something probably that is a little bigger or has a larger sweep or makes a bigger mark. And that's where these come into play. So they look a bit like a palette knife. These are plastic as opposed to metal. You can still do this. If you've got a metal palette knife, painting knife, you can just buy the heads and put them on. I just would say that the metal edges tend to cut their way through the foam ends, but you can do it. I have 2 different kinds. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, but effectively the replacement sponge heads are usually either triangular, like that one, or can't get in the packet, or oval like that one. What's the difference between them? The triangular one is the one that gets into all the corners. So if you've got something that has like a lot of detail, or you want to be able to do a large area and some of the finer parts of it, I can use this to smudge my pastel together. But I can also use the tip for getting into the corners. And you can see on here and here, look, where I've used them in the past for other colours, and they make a lovely, soft, fuzzy, blended mark. So if your kind of watercolour sensibilities spill over into your pastel painting and you like that very soft, ethereal vignette disappears off into nothing background, then these are tools that are going to help you enormously. Now you can, of course, and as you'll see in this box, look at the state of that, an assortment of sponges. Some are makeup, some, most of them tend to be synthetic, because I don't like using natural sponges. But you see there at the bottom, look, all of the discarded heads of my blending tools, just in case, rather than using a new one, I go, well, that's covered in red already. Let's use that. You'll see that I've got some sponges in here. I've also, where's that gone? Here it is. If you are a makeup wearer, or if you kind of get those sets of makeup where you're not likely to use the tools, a little eyeshadow tool like that is quite useful. But think laterally as well. You can use cotton buds. You can use sticks wrapped in kitchen towel. There's all sorts of things that you can use to blend in your pastels very successfully. Now, just to kind of conclude today, there's a few other things that you might want to think about. Let's tidy up. In terms of other little accessories which might prove useful. A bit of old towel or a rag is really useful. You can use wipes. Try to make them biodegradable if you possibly can, or you can see this was like an old cleaning towel which I've cut into a smaller square. You can spray it with your water bottle. That takes care of cleaning your hands. It can also take care of when you need to get rid of the dust. You can tap it in there. You can, of course, then wash that. You're not going to have enough pastel on there to do your washing machine any harm. Or you can just soak them in the sink. It's not going to do any of your appliances any harm either. Now, Jo, who I know is pastel and charcoal artist extraordinaire, she is also saying a chamois leather squares are good for blending too. That's a brilliant piece of advice, Jo. Thank you very much. This is something, as you can see, it's fairly grubby and covered in paint and all sorts of stuff. This is something I have to hand as well. You also might want to use a knife if you don't like using a regular sharpener. And then the last little accessory that I have for you is this, which is a pencil extender. Very often, as you can see, my favourite little black pencil there, which is starting to die a death because it's shattered down here. But I refuse to throw it away, but I would struggle to get any really decent marks out of it in using it this way. I would feel like it was too tight. So I've got a pencil extender which has a thick end and a thin end, and you pop it in like that and push that up to lock it in. And then I've got a nice way of being able to make marks with my pastel pencil again, and you're not wasting the end of that. So that's a few extra things. Now, this is your opportunity. If you have any extra bits of advice, or you've used something, I tell you what I haven't told you, just while you're thinking of any last questions or any bits and pieces of advice that you might have, these are useful as well. Recognise these. I mean, we call them Watsits in our house, which for our non-UK friends that might not read at all, these are those little packing peanuts. Used to be polystyrene, very often now made out of potato starch, but they're really good for blending. So they do rather interesting job of blending across large areas. So that can be good. And when you're finished with it, you can stick them on your compost if they're potato starch, which makes them awesome. The only thing I would say, on some surfaces, sometimes pastel matte, if you've got a lot of pastel down, they do make that kind of fingernails down chalkboard noise. They can end up being a little squeaky. So if you are sensitive to some of those sounds, then you might want to avoid that. Talking of being sensitive, do be careful when using pastels on your fingers, because the pigment in them can get into the pores of your skin, and it's not going to do you any harm, but it might suck the moisture out of them. So every time you've had a pastel session, Wash your hands really thoroughly, re-moisturize them so that they don't end up being too dry. You can see already I'm in a right state. I've got 4 or 5 pastel workshops to teach this week, and so I'm going to have to take care of my hands. If for any reason at all you have breathing difficulties, maybe you've got asthma, COPD, something like that, then it might be worth wearing a mask. I've been recently saying work in a well-ventilated room, but I was in a situation recently where actually a well-ventilated room didn't help, because the well-ventilated room had a fan in it. It was air conditioning, and all it did was blow all the dust everywhere. So you need to kind of have a nice balance between being able to move your pastels, being able to use it safely, but not inhaling it. You can use gloves. I know that some of you out there do use gloves. It's just that you lose a bit of contact between the stuff that you're trying to make come out of your hands, the creativity that you're trying to make come out of your hands, and the page that you're working on. But of course, if you really want to work with pastels, then maybe you're going to need to put something on your hands, or use tools where you don't need to come into contact with them at all, because you can, I'll pick a colour, Ali, any colour. You can use your sticks of pastel and actually pull the colour from the surface with your blending tool and apply it in that way. So you don't necessarily have to touch pastels too much, or of course use a pastel pencil. Now that's I think that's as much information as I have for you today, but I'm just going to check the comments. One-sided razor blades, Rosie is saying one-sided razor blades are good for scraping off a fine layer so you can apply more pastel. Yes, absolutely, Rosie. And Ali is commenting that somebody that she orders from on a regular basis don't use packing peanuts anymore. No, I get that, because a lot of people have gone to shredded cardboard. You can actually use that as well. You can roll it into a point and use that instead of a paper stump. So next time you have a parcel, for whatever reason, have a good look at the packing ingredients to see if it might make an interesting texture or something where you can fashion it into a blending tool. Now, I hope all of that information has been useful to you. If you're watching me live in November, there's plenty more still coming up. We have a Technique Tuesday tutorial next week where we're going to be looking at using pastels and pastel pencils for an eye study. So if you like portraiture, but you struggle to get the eyes looking lifelike, or you'd like to kind of really hone your skills for making eyes look really lifelike, then you might want to join me for that. You can book via the Learning to Page website then. Learning to Paint website page. You can see it there at the bottom of the screen. If you want to join me over the festive period, then use that QR code or pop over to the website to find the 12 Days of Creativity project. And please let as many people as you can know. Share it on social media, or even better, tell them about it, because we know how social media works. It's there and then it's gone. So maybe if you've got like a little group, share the link with them via WhatsApp, or send them an email, or the next time you're in the company of creative people, or somebody says, do you know what, I quite fancy starting to learn to paint, point them in my direction, and I promise you that I will take care of them. Now, there's lots to enjoy this month. Don't forget the tips and tricks demonstration, I've lost the ability to speak, of this tulip field is coming up in a couple of weeks. You can find details of that on the Learning to Paint YouTube channel. But enjoy your pastel painting, won't you? I'm looking forward to see what you create, and I'll catch up with you very, very soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.